lost her head some time ago. Whether it was taken from her or she had misplaced it, she did not know. All she knew was that it was well and truly gone. She made do with what she had. There are those who say that the heart is a better ruler than the head, so perhaps she was not lacking. Every choice she made and every path she went down, she never had any doubt. She would say to herself, this is the path my heart truly wishes to take. And there was something comforting in that, in the surrender to love, to one's kinder nature. For the heart is viewed as being warmer than the head, less ambitious, more full of charity. So for a time, the sorceress lived a life of peace and content. Now, I have mentioned that this woman was a sorceress, and of that there was no doubt. Her power was limited, but astonishing nonetheless. She could not heal the sick, but there were many who claimed such a gift, so perhaps this was no shortcoming. She could not bring riches, but there were even more of those who pretended that ability, so again she was not found wanting. No, the sorceress had only one gift, and it was solely her own. She had the ability to conjure up visions out of thin air. She was much loved by the people in her village for her gift. Every day she'd be visited by a neighbor who wished to be given a vision. But not visions, not simple visions, like from a fortune teller, told one day and then forgotten. But visions that could be carried home in one's hand and stared at again and again. Some of her visions were beautiful and made not a few of the men fall madly in love with the sorceress and her heart. Some of her visions were puzzling, and wise men would gaze at them for hours trying to uncover their secrets. Some of her visions were frightening and were tissed at by the adults, but treasured by the children, stared at by candlelight until shivering overtook them and they could stand it no longer. The sorceress thought she would be content to live the entirety of her life in the village. But then one day her heart grew tight in her chest and whispered, "Go." She thought she had misheard it, and for the first time she ignored her heart. But the very next day it repeated its order. Go. And with no head to counter it, she had to follow its command. Everyone in the village gathered to bid her farewell. Women baked bread for her journey. Men kissed her cheek. Children pinned notes of sorrow to her dress. She walked through the forest for days on end, just waiting for her heart to tell her to stop. But then one day, the trill of birds gave way to the crunch of machinery. She came to a great city, a miracle on its own, with buildings that rose from the earth and towered over puny trees beside them. She gazed up at them in fear and wonder. She shivered and made to move on, but to her surprise, her heart whispered, "Here." And, with no head to counter it, she had no choice but to obey. She walked into the city, thousands of people pushing up against her, waves of flesh pushing her to and fro. She hid in a doorway to escape the flood of them, and saw from beside the door that the building had a room to let. The room was vast and made her feel small. But her heart whispered, yes. So she made it her home. In the corner of the room, there was a small silver dagger covered with dust. I wonder what you are for, the sorceress thought. And then sat on the floor, and waited for visitors. She waited. No one knocked on her door. The days passed in silence. She created visions for herself and wanted to share them with others. And though the streets were flooded with people, no one knocked on her door. Wait, said her heart, so she did. She grew cold. The villagers had always bought her blankets, but no one here did the same. She grew hungry. The villagers had always brought her food, but no one here did the same. Worst of all, she grew lonely. The villagers had always bought her company, but no one here did the same. They will come, said her heart. They will come for your gift. But no one did. And the winter grew colder still. The sorceress grew desperate. And finally, she just opened up her window and threw all her visions out, hoping that a passerby, just one, would stop to gaze at them. But they were simply brushed off shoulders, dropped in the snowy ground, trampled underfoot. Each neglected vision was like a blow to her fragile heart. And with no head to hide her from her shame, to fill her head with hopeful delusions, her heart was left naked and unprotected. She thought of her villagers, the friends whom she loved.
So naked and unprotected should be when you start to come out.
She hoped she could see them once more, but knew it could never be. I'm sorry, said her heart. I was wrong to lead us here. I had hoped to gain more love, but instead lost all that I once had. It was then that the sorceress noticed once more the dagger in the corner of the room. Ah, she said, that is what you are for. And she plunged it deep into her breast. The pain was sharp, but when she looked down, her eyes grew wide with wonder. She looked down and something was leaving her. Her life was leaving her, but not in the form of blood. There, spilling out of her, oozing out of the gaping wound she had created, were visions. Streams of images pulling around her feet. Images of the villagers, the friends who she left behind. These visions filled her last moments with joy. And for that she forgave her heart for leading her astray. As she left this earth, they say that if the sorceress had not lost her head so long ago, it would certainly have been smiling.